Shocking, unthinkable, unfathomable. Those are just some of the words being used to describe the case against Deasia Watkins.
This is one of the most disturbing cases I've ever seen in my life.
These are images that will be indelibly marked in my memory.
Warning: this material contains descriptions of mental illness and traumatic events involving harm to a child. The content may be disturbing for some viewers. This material is presented for educational purposes to understand systemic problems in mental health and child protection.
The early hours of March 16, 2015, began like any other quiet morning in the College Hill neighborhood of Cincinnati, Ohio. Families were just starting their day. Children were being dropped off to wait for the school bus, and adults were preparing to head to work. No one could have imagined that within one home, a tragedy had unfolded that would leave an entire community in shock and ignite a nationwide conversation about mental health, systemic failures, and the urgent need for reform in child protection services. When a 5-year-old child entered his grandmother's home that morning, he expected to find warmth and familiarity. Instead, he stumbled upon a scene so disturbing that it defied comprehension. In fear and confusion, he ran outside to call for help, bringing his father into the home. The call to 911 was frantic and heartbreaking. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but by the time they arrived, it was already too late. The life of 3-month-old Deasia Watkins had been tragically cut short, and her mother, 20-year-old Deasia Watkins, was found lying silently in a nearby bedroom. She was covered in evidence of what had occurred, her mind seemingly lost in another world. This moment marked the beginning of a case that would deeply challenge law enforcement, the courts, and the public. To understand how this tragedy unfolded, we must go back years before that fateful morning. Deasia Watkins was born into a life marked by instability and trauma. Her childhood was filled with challenges. Her mother, Tina Johnson, struggled with serious mental health issues, including schizoaffective disorder and depression. Her father, Terrence Watkins, was mostly absent, grappling with his own battles, including time in prison and drug addiction. When Deasia was just 3 years old, concerns about her safety prompted authorities to intervene, placing her into the child protection system. It was an early sign of the turbulent path ahead. Over the following years, Deasia moved between relatives, foster care, and temporary shelters. Her formative years were shaped by feelings of abandonment and loss. At one point, she found some stability when a family friend, Barbara Owens, took her in and provided a nurturing home. Owens later described Deasia as intelligent and capable, but also deeply affected by the trauma of her early years. Even as a child, she struggled with trust and carried unspoken pain. As Deasia grew older, the challenges in her life did not fade. By her late teens, she was living with her boyfriend, James Brown. In December 2014, the couple welcomed their daughter, Deasia. For a brief moment, there was hope. Friends and family recalled Deasia's excitement about becoming a mother. She promised to give her baby the love and care she had always longed for herself. Photographs from that time show baby Deasia dressed in bright outfits, her wide eyes filled with innocence and curiosity. But beneath the surface, something was deeply wrong. Within weeks of giving birth, Deasia's behavior began to change dramatically. She spoke of demons, became paranoid, and displayed extreme mood swings. These were clear signs of a serious mental health condition known as postpartum psychosis, a rare but severe illness that affects approximately 1 in every 1,000 mothers. This condition can escalate quickly, leading to delusions, hallucinations, and, in the most dangerous cases, harm to oneself or others. In late January 2015, police were called to the couple's apartment after neighbors reported alarming screams. Officers found Deasia in a highly agitated state, holding baby Janiyah. She was incoherent and aggressive, a stark contrast to the loving mother she had been just weeks before. Deasia was immediately transported to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, where she was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis. Medical professionals prescribed strong antipsychotic medication and placed her under a 72-hour observation. They issued strict instructions. She was not to be left alone with her baby under any circumstances, and she needed to take her medication consistently. Moreover, because of the strength of the medication, she was not allowed to breastfeed Janiyah. These were critical safety measures intended to protect both mother and child. However, as soon as Deasia was discharged on January 30th, cracks began to appear in the system meant to safeguard the family. James Brown noticed that she was not taking her medication and was secretly continuing to breastfeed despite medical warnings. He reported this troubling behavior to social services, but the response was limited. Social workers were overwhelmed, and important follow-ups were missed. Deasia's mental state continued to deteriorate, yet she remained in environments where she had access to her baby. By early March, the situation became even more complicated. Custody proceedings were underway, and the court ruled that due to her unstable condition, Deasia posed a direct threat to her child. Custody of Janiyah was officially granted to the Hamilton County Department of Employment and Social Services. The plan was to place Janiyah with a trusted relative, Deasia's aunt, Deborah Stewart. The court's order was crystal clear. Neither Deasia nor James was to have unsupervised contact with the baby. Social services were tasked with checking in weekly to ensure compliance. Tragically, this safeguard failed. Deborah Stewart, struggling with her own health problems and facing the challenges of caring for a newborn, made a decision that would have devastating consequences. Despite the court order, she allowed Deasia to move into her home, believing she was helping her niece by providing shelter. When social workers visited, Deborah concealed the truth, claiming that Deasia was not living there. This deception created a dangerous blind spot. Overwhelmed and unaware of the true situation, social workers were unable to intervene. On March 12th, just days before the tragedy, social workers visited Deborah's home. They asked directly whether Deasia was in contact with Janiyah. Deborah reassured them that the court's conditions were being followed. In reality, Deasia was living under the same roof, untreated and unsupervised. This was a critical missed opportunity. The system had one last chance to protect Janiyah, and it slipped away. In the early hours of March 16th, Deasia's untreated psychosis reached its most dangerous point. When emergency responders arrived later that morning, they found Deborah in a state of shock, and Deasia lying silently in her bedroom. The investigation that followed was meticulous and deeply disturbing. Detectives pieced together the final hours through interviews, physical evidence, and Deasia's eventual confession. It became clear that her mind had been consumed by delusions and paranoia. Her actions were the culmination of weeks of untreated illness and systemic failure. Prosecutors faced a difficult challenge. Deasia had no prior criminal record and had been diagnosed with a severe mental illness. Initially, she did not cooperate with investigators, remaining silent and detached. After undergoing treatment at a psychiatric facility, she eventually admitted responsibility. In February 2017, 2 years after the incident, she pleaded guilty to murder in exchange for avoiding a life sentence without parole. During her sentencing, Deasia addressed the court, expressing love for her daughter despite the horrific outcome. The judge, acknowledging the profound tragedy, sentenced her to 15 years in prison with the possibility of parole. The aftermath of this case revealed deep flaws in the systems designed to protect vulnerable children and families. While social workers had technically followed protocol, the reality was more complicated. High turnover, overwhelming caseloads, and a lack of resources meant that warning signs were missed. In the weeks following the tragedy, the Hamilton County Department of Employment and Social Services implemented reforms aimed at reducing workloads and improving mental health oversight. These changes were necessary, but they came too late for baby Deasia. This case also highlighted the urgent need for public awareness about postpartum psychosis. Unlike the more common postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis is a rare but severe condition that can develop suddenly. Symptoms include hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, and extreme confusion. Without immediate medical intervention, the consequences can be catastrophic. Experts stress that early detection and treatment can save lives. In many cases, mothers who receive timely care recover fully and go on to raise healthy families. Deasia's case is a painful reminder of what can happen when warning signs are overlooked. In the courtroom, prosecutors considered whether to file charges against Deborah Stewart for violating the court order. Ultimately, they decided against it. The order had been directed at Deasia, not Deborah, and prosecutors needed her as a key witness. While Deborah's decision to allow her niece into her home was a critical factor, it was clear that she never intended for harm to come to her great niece. She too was left grappling with grief and guilt. The community's response was one of mourning and reflection. Deasia Watkins was laid to rest in a small, private funeral attended only by close family members. Her short life, just 3 months long, became a symbol of the urgent need for better support systems for young mothers and vulnerable children. Advocates began pushing for reforms, emphasizing education about postpartum mental health and the importance of proactive intervention. From a legal and social perspective, this case continues to resonate. It raises complex questions about accountability, mental illness, and the limits of the child protection system. Could more resources have prevented this tragedy? Could earlier intervention have saved Deasia's life and helped Deasia receive the care she desperately needed? These are questions that remain painfully relevant. Today, experts urge communities to look for warning signs in new mothers, such as extreme paranoia, incoherent speech, or rapid mood swings. Postpartum psychosis is a medical emergency, and swift action can prevent harm. Families are encouraged to seek immediate help from healthcare providers, crisis hotlines, or emergency services if they suspect a loved one is experiencing severe postpartum symptoms. Education and awareness are key tools in preventing future tragedies. The story of Deasia Watkins and her daughter Deasia is not just a heartbreaking crime. It is a stark reminder of the gaps in our social safety nets and the consequences of inaction. By learning from this case, we can work toward a future where vulnerable mothers receive the support they need and children are protected from preventable harm. This tragedy should serve as a call to action for healthcare professionals, social workers, lawmakers, and communities to prioritize mental health and child safety. As this case fades from headlines, its lessons remain urgent. Behind every statistic is a family, a child, a mother in crisis. By improving our systems and extending compassion, we can honor Deasia's memory and ensure that her short life sparks lasting change.